It's just a big solid stem. These here, and this one here. This one, and a big black one with a bar. Alright, them was Adena Indians. Them was around about 3,000 to 1,500 years ago. Them was the first Indians in this part of the country to start farming corn on a big widespread level. And this really is the time period when you've seen the quality of their stuff start declining, because they depended more on farming, on agriculture. They got away from making stuff like this. See, this is an archaic point. This is a big kirk, it's had the tip broke off. And this under it's an archaic point, it's a pine tree. These here is probably, anywhere probably 5,000 to 8,000 years old. And this is when people were still just roaming around looking for big game to take down, a big meal, looking for meat. And there's so much difference in the craftsmanship between something like this and something like that. As time went forward, as time progressed closer to our time, they made sorrier stuff because they was farmers. They didn't have to get out and shoot a big buck. They just lay up and eat them a squash and an ear or two of corn. You know, people change just like we're changing now. We just keep changing, same way with primitive people.
Quality went down.
Yep. So I guess I'm gonna try to break some rocks here. It's probably what y'all come to see me do anyway. So I'm gonna try. I'm really not going. I thought about trying to sit down and make a point from start to finish, and I think y'all would probably pick up more because I got some preforms and examples I can show you if I just hit a little bit on everything, like on the different types of flaking and all this, how to take big flakes, little flakes. I'll show y'all a little bit of everything. And if there's something that y'all think I'm going over, if I'm going too fast, or if you need me to go back over, just holler at me. So, first things first, if we want to sit down here and start with one of these old big spawls. This here's a piece of dacite. It's pretty good stuff we'll start with. So what you want to do is start breaking something off for to work with. Thin it down, right? First thing, protect your ass.
Hey,
so, yes,
he's asking about your rocks. He wants to know, do you find all those on your own, or are you ordering them online?
No,
or?
stuff like all this stuff here, I order all this online. And I'll tell you a good place, I'm not trying to like name drop or nothing, but if you wanna order some good rocks, get good quality stuff, GoNapping.com. It's a good place to get stuff. GoNapping.com. That's where just about all this comes from. And they thin it down. They don't send you old big rough oblong stuff. They thin it pretty good and send you good stuff. So I like
So is that naturally polished, or is that?
Yeah, that's the natural finish to that. That's just
Through and through.
Through and through. Yeah. Hard to believe that's real, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it don't look real. It looks like it's
glass.
It looks like it's came out of a mold. I know what you mean, but no, that's real stone. And there's even a type of this in I think it's part of northern Mexico or something that's green, almost like this. But he'll be big chunks like this.
Didn't you refer to
I think
that?
the mines used it. It's real important to them.
Wouldn't that refer to as volcanic glass?
It's volcanic glass, but it's obsidian. This is mahogany. There's different kinds of it too. This is mahogany. There's black. There's smoke. There's like there's some that's got like, it'll be gray, but it'll have like black streaks all through it. He'll think it's called midnight lace. There's a dragon skin that comes from Armenia. It's a whole big world of rocks out there once you get into looking at them. You know.
That gray and yellow chert that you find around here, is it any count for anything?
In this area, I don't really know. I don't do much rock hunting in this area.
Especially up where I'm from, and around Danville, you can find just big, huge chunks of that gray and yellow chert.
I bet it would be good.
Yeah, kind of like that stuff right there.
There's good material. See, that's better natural material than what, like, say, is found naturally where me and Todd live. Yeah. You know.
Is that quartz that he's got?
I don't think it's quartz.
It's like crumbling.
It's glassy looking material, whatever it is.
That's what I say, the chert that we have, it'll break off in big chunks like that. but I didn't know if it would be any good to try and work down to get it thin or not.
A lot of times, this is another thing that I've not done any experiment with. You can heat it in a fire pit, and that is supposed to make a real big difference too. Heating it makes it more brittle, and it even changes the color of it a little, changes the consistency and all that stuff.
Yeah, not to interrupt you. Some of the places actually sell the heat-treated.
They do, yeah. But and also something like this don't need heat treated. Something like this obsidian, that's about as brittle as you want stone to be. And if you was to heat that, when you just peck it a little bit like that, it just turns to cinders. You know, you wouldn't be able to do. You'd just be crushing it all the time if you put any heat to this. Or I think so. I'm not an expert again, but I wouldn't want to heat anything like this. Here's an example of what happens to stone though when you heat. This is called KY. This is from Oklahoma. I bought this. This come out of a great big old piece. But you see all that red and all those speckles in it, that's from heat. This has been heated in a digital oven. So they put all this rock in there, set it precisely for like 2-3 hours, and then it comes out perfect. But before it goes in, I've heard it's real rough to work with. It's almost like limestone, that you about can't break it, but they heat it and then it makes, killer stuff. You know, here's a flake out of it. But that's the difference that heating stuff will make. So, we'll try to break some of this dass out here. And the first thing you want to do, and it's another use for your hammer stones, is you need to abrade anything that you're going to do a direct strike on, like that, and try to drive a big flake. You want to abrade it. And abrading's a fancy word, but all you're doing is taking a stone. You see that little chip there? Okay, what you're doing when you abrade is you're taking all them little feathery chips off. Because all them's going to do is waste. Well, no, they're going to waste your energy, if that makes any sense. Instead of you making direct contact with the meaty part of that stone, it's just like a plate in a bulletproof vest, kind of. How that plate absorbs the shock wave of that round. That's what these are doing. So you want to get this away from that. You want to take the plate out of the vest, so to speak. That way when you hit it, there ain't much protecting it that way. So you go all the way around that thing, roughly. And you break big pieces like that off, it's okay. Get him on down there. And this is something that's took me a long time to figure out that's really helpful too. Used to, man, I'd just get in here with a rock and just go through here hell winding. Just beating it to death. And time I get done, I just have little crumbs. Okay.
What kind of rock is your hammer rock?
It's just a little old cobby piece of quartz I found on a lake shore. Okay. It almost made a geode, but I think it stopped. But yeah, just.
Does it need to be harder than whatever you're trying to
Yes,
map?
it's a good point. I forgot that. The rock you're hitting your stone with needs to be harder than your target. It needs to be harder than what you're working with. So you wouldn't want to say, for example, you wouldn't want to go down here to the creek and get a sandstone and start trying to. See, I've already cut myself that quick and didn't even realize it. But you wouldn't want to go down here and get a sandstone and start hitting this, because all you're going to do is break your sandstone and then tear your good stone up. Hit it in places you don't want to do that.
So granite is one of the hardest rocks, right?
It is, but I don't think that I ever used any granite just because I never had access to it. Quartz is really hard if you can find it. This is another piece of river quartz. This is what I use on big stuff like this. And another thing about a big hammer stone like this is what I was telling Todd a while ago. When you start, it's going to be slick, but I've used this a lot, so I've roughed it up. So a lot of times you can use your same stone as an abrader and a hammer stone. And another thing too, the reason I've laid this second one on my lap is just to get the flakes out of my way. And right there, You see the blood coming out of my middle finger? That's exactly why. This is so easy to cut yourself doing this. And this is another reason I understand why people wear gloves. But just right there, it's just so easy to cut yourself. And what you want to do is keep them out of your way, right? You make a few, you hit, a lot of times I'll hit that thing one time and throw them out of your way, because what'll happen, if you don't, you set your hand back down there and move it a little, and you've run that stuff all in the side of your hand, you know, and you'll really know it then. So I'm gonna try and take a flake off this thing now that it's abraded, and what you want to try to do is thin it as much as possible. And the way to thin it is to follow these ridges. Alright, these ridges are all the tops of high places in this stone. These over here are a little more faint. So what you want to do is try to drive your flake the length of that ridge line. But you have to have a way to get to this. And this is part of where it becomes not so much a physical game, it becomes a thinking game. It's like putting a puzzle together backwards, if that makes any sense. So you got to have a way to get to this, and what you call that is a platform. And right here, you kind of already have a platform going down this little ridge line. And what a platform is just the edge. That one there is really not exposed there, but it's just the edge to where you can make a good strike at about 60 or 70 degrees. That's textbook, about 60 or 70 degrees, and get your energy to follow that line, that ridge line down it, and terminate a flake there somewhere in that area. So I'm going to try to attempt that now, and we'll see how it goes. Didn't work that well. Crushed, see. It gave way, but it didn't fall. It just went so far. And probably what happened there was my platform was too big. If it would have been smaller like this, it probably would have followed it more. So I've still got two going into that. I'm just going to hit them and see what happens before I do. Flip them out of my way. Crushed it, but that's okay. I've already took that much out, and you can see anywhere that you make flakes, you're going to leave a little texture on the stone. So I'm just going to try to go around here and see if I can drive a big flake and thin this thing. And if y'all got any questions why I'm doing this, just holler at me. Don't worry about interfering with me or not. Alright, did y'all hear that? Yep. That crack.
Yeah.
Alright.
Sharp crack, yeah.
That's what you want to do right there. That's ideal. And when you hear that crack, this is another bad habit I got myself into. Double hitting. Doing that, or like hitting lightly and then again. Well, you don't want to do that. You want to make every lick count, and right there's a prime example. You know, and you hear that crack, don't hit it again. Stop. That's another thing I'd mess up on. I just, you know, like I say, go through our hell wind. You hear that crack, stop. Because what'll happen if you hit that again, you're going to break it up, and that's a good piece you can use later. So, right there, that's ideal. I've thinned that down that much. And not only have I thinned my piece I was working with, I've got all this to work with later, you know, killer stone. So, after you do that, the first thing you want to do is not get too excited, going bleeding like a stuck off. Just go around that again. Don't get excited and try to take you another flake, you'll mess up. Especially where your flake terminated from. Braid that thing, whittle him down. Yeah, thank you. Braid him down. And not just one side, both sides. But you especially want to do it on the side that you're striking from. That's the most important. That it's abraded the direction you're trying to make your strike. And see, that's the importance of getting all this out of your way. All that's going to do is stop the full blow of your strap. Man, that smells good. What was that?
That's lavender.
That's good.
That should help keep it from getting sore.
I appreciate it. But that's what I was saying. I didn't even have no idea I'd cut myself by the look. This stuff, if you fool with much, you'll get cut. I don't care if you wear gloves or not. It's just part of it. Okay, so that's a good thin strap. I've got it to break it. Let's see if I can take another in here. And again, you want to look for these ridges and see if you can get away to it. See, right here's a high one, but there's not a good platform here. So you wouldn't want to hit. And I'll show you what'll happen if I try to get to this and I don't have a good platform. I'll show you what it'll do, just as an example. You won't get nowhere. See? Or it'll step. That's a good example of what'll happen when you don't have a good platform. You see all them? See how the old it's indentured down in that, and it looks like steps.
Yeah.
They call that that's called a step fracture. That's why they call it a step fracture. It looks like steps. Well, what's happened? My platform was at the wrong angle, and I hit it, and then you'll have stuff like that happen. But that's what causes that, and I've done that to show y'all that's what'll happen if you don't have a good platform set up. Then you'll have it. But I mean, still, that wasn't like we broke it in two. Still, you're still getting big flakes, and that's still something that can be whittled down. I'm just gonna braid and get him a few more licks here, and then I'll move on to something else. But this, in taking big flakes, this is the most important part, I believe, is braiding and taking all them trash flakes out of your way. That's the name of the game. See how you just see them flying everywhere. And get all that off. You kind of want to think about it. You don't want to get no big hurries or nothing. I think I'll try to take that right there if I can. I'm going to set me up a little platform, or try to. The way I'm going to do it is kind of whittle down on either side of my platform.
Whittle down on either side of the platform?
Yep, see I make a high place there? That's your platform.
Okay.
Now. And the way I've done that is I've whittled down on either side, just to get it to jut out a little bit where that line is. Okay. I'm going to try it here to see if it'll give anything. A small flake, but it's still good. But ideally, that's all you want to do. You just want to keep chasing them high places and all them little lines that make ridges like that. Too steep. I mean, anytime you're making licks like that, I mean, you can make an arrow point out of something like that. You're making progress. But on something this size, if I'm mistaken, you want to take big flakes though, if you can. And you'll see why later on. If you don't take big flakes, you'll get this whittled down to, say, a spear or a knife, and it'll still be big and thick in the middle, because you didn't take long enough flakes in the process starting off.
When you order a chunk of that stuff online, like how much you know, like how is that? Is that
I
a
mean,
ton- is that-
it's affordable. It's not bad. A few bucks for a big piece like that.
like a few meaning 3 or
3, 4, 5. I mean,
okay.
I was trying to think. On Gold Knapping, I think is $120 for. I forget how many pieces I got. The shipping and you know, is 120 bucks, and I think I got like, I don't know, 15 or 20 pieces about this size.
Oh, okay.
I'd say
I just
20
wonder, like,
pieces.
you know, like,
Yeah.
and then any other kind of medium, like wood or exotic wood, or you know, you got to chunk that big to make something only this big. It's like almost every cut you're going, ah.
Yeah, that's
geez.
the thing. Yeah, it
There
is.
goes
Yeah.
my man, you know?
That's why I
There goes
don't.
a $1. Yeah.
There's guys that'll buy like different kinds of agates and stuff like that, and I don't really invest in nothing like that because I just.
So it don't hurt your feelings to chip away.
Oh
at
no,
the-
that ain't hurting me at all.
Yeah.
That's the only way you're gonna learn, you know.
I just didn't know if that chunk was $30 or $3.
Oh no,
That's why I thought going down here to the creek and getting a few rocks.
but for learning, that really is the best thing.
Yeah.
I'll tell you how I learned. You know, really, is out artifact hunting. I'd find a big piece of flint, and I said, "Oh man, I bet I can make something out of that." And I'll take it home and beat on it with another rock I found and try to make something, you know. And then once I halfway figured out what I was doing, and then I started buying rocks. But I mean, if a person wants to get into it, hey, jump right in there and buy you a bunch of rocks, you know. But the only way you're ever going to learn is just get in there and start doing it.
Spend several $100 buying everything. So, well, I thought I was going to enjoy it, but
Yeah. Be a bad way to learn, but
You end up with a whole box of little bitty chips.
yeah. Sore fingers.
But actually, the most fun part to me is doing this. Is just sitting here on these big rocks and just cracking them. That really is the most fun. Because you ain't got to be, I mean, you got to hit your mark and all that. But it ain't like sitting here, man, I'll tell you, I'd be right by myself and
Well, we're
nobody
gonna
even
beat on
watch
this
me. And just be pouring the sweat, pressure flaking, because I know if I miss lick or if I push in the wrong place, I'm going to shear that thing in half. While you're doing this, it really don't, I mean, you get in there and break it till it looks like something and work on it some more.
So if you lived 1,000 years ago, you'd be the guy making the preforms and trading them, then, huh? If you like doing that.
Well, I mean, maybe. Who's to say what I'd be doing? Who's to say what any of us would be doing back then? But yeah, I probably would have been.
See, I think I mean, I've never done that before, but I think I can already tell. I'd be the guy I'd want the preforms and let me finish up the rest of it. I wouldn't want to be doing all that.
I'll tell you something interesting that I read in some archaeological books. A lot of archaeologists think that women was probably the best flint knappers because they just more patient natured, and like men, myself, I know myself I'm this way. If I'm hitting on a piece and it don't want to give just right, then I'll just keep. It's a man's nature. You're going to sit and you're going to get frustrated and you're going to hit it too hard and you're going to break what you're working on. And that's attached to the skull of the deer. And a lot of people would use that in because it is the hardest end. But I don't know. I hold it like that and it just feels more natural to me.
I know when you go to some of these rendezvous and stuff, you'll see guys doing that, and they'll have a piece of antler with a huge piece of brass around it.
Yeah, a cap over it.
Yeah, what's the purpose of that?
Well, it's copper.
Yeah.
Well,
Or
all
copper,
that copper does really, well, this sounds great. This antler is hard enough that it will flake this, but this stone is harder and more abrasive than this antler. So what that cap does is it protects this, and it just serves as a barrier pretty much.
Get it more longevity.
Exactly. Yeah, it don't eat it up that way. It's eating at the copper instead of. You can see mine. I mean, all my stuff is eat up.
Yeah.
You know, just from impacts. The stone's the same way. Impact over time eats stuff up, eats your tools up.
And instead of having the copper
That just gives you a reason to go out and find new tools. It does me.
around it, about that far back from the end of it. Is that just to add more weight to it, maybe, or something?
That's all you're
Because I
doing
was
with
curious
that.
what good that
There's a
would do
decent
that
flake, you know, make your air pouring out of that. But that's all you doing. You just going, you know. And also my edge, I've done abraded my edge. That's why y'all didn't see me doing it again. I'd abraded there before I set it down. And you just want to look. You don't want to be hit. All right, here's a good example. So right here, you have a flat on top, and then kind of a belly underneath. So if you want to take a flake off of this, it's going to be kind of difficult without it diving and stepping like this over here.
Okay.
So what you kind of got to look for is you kind of got to drop, like here's a good way to look at it. Like you kind of want to imagine a center line from one end of this to the other, right? And ideally you want to keep that line in the middle and bevel off both ways. One side, other side, and try to keep your line in the center. So right now the line's up here, so what I'm going to try to do is make some strikes on this side, this way, and put the line down here more. And that way we kind of bevel it both ways instead of it running one way right now. I'll try in here and see how it goes. Right there is something that took me a long time to get over too. If you get your courage up to really use your hand to insulate with, instead of your lap pad, most of the time you're going to have a gap in between your stone and your pad, and it'll cause some offshoots and vibration. But if you can catch it like it, and it will cut you sometimes, and it's kind of, it kind of goes against your common sense a little bit. You would say, hey self, you better not try to put that hammer towards your fingers like that, but really that's kind of the way you got to do it. You're aiming at your finger because your fingers, your hand is insulating your blows, and you can catch that flake like that, and it stops it. So what you do not want to do is be holding that thing out here like this. You're going to shear it plumb in two, or it's going to step. You gotta insulate the energy from your blow to control it. See right there, I just barely made chip with the trying. And the harder you grip that thing, and the more you insulate it, the more likely it is your chip is to dive, and you get a deep flake. If you're just lightly insulating it like I was right there, you know, that's a good example of how this flint will follow a ridge. It's a perfect example. That's all I got. I just barely pecked it there, and I was barely holding pressure, and it just barely chased that ridge line, see. But now if I'd really been gripping the daylights out of it and hit it, it would have dove way down there, and I'd have got something more like, well, probably even bigger than this. And that's the difference in having pressure when you're doing percussion work. But that's all, that's pretty much indirect, or not direct percussion. I'll show y'all some indirect real quick. And all it is you're using a punch, and you're using either a billet, you could use a piece of wood. A lot of guys will use big seasoned pieces of wood this long.